do need a Frost Mage build with absolutely incredible damage sustainability, as well as the best AoE and single target damage with additional CC capabilities, double your damage output by just swapping a couple talent points, and having the best damage output right now that is currently possible, then I got the Frost Mage build for you. What's up, World Utopia, here back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Blue Protocol Star Resonance. Okay, so as per usual, we're going to cover everything from talent points to reforging, what you should be prioritizing with refining, as well as even your gem slots, even of course your skill books, as well as a whole bunch more. Alright, so let's just jump into it. We'll get into the talent tree. This is what matters first and foremost. As we go through the talents, we're going to go through them one by one so you can follow me and go along as I do the skill tree. Okay, so I have gone ahead and reset the skill tree. Of course, we are going to be into Icicle spec. There is a bunch of debate there between Icicle and Frostbeam. From what I have seen, Icicle does outperform Frostbeam in pretty much every scenario, aside from maybe quick dungeon AoE, but on long boss fights, which are happening right now, Icicle typically is the preferred spec. That is completely up to you. This is an Icicle build. So first up here, we do have our starting 3 talent points. I've always recommended to come straight down into energy saving as well as into deep cold magic spear. Those are the first 3 that I would always grab in pretty much every circumstance. Your damage is going to be the highest with these 3. We're going to want to focus on single target damage right away, as our AoE damage is already good, and what you're going to want to buff on most magic classes is your single target damage. We next up want to come over here to the right and go ahead and grab Frostblade, as that's going to increase our damage by 20% additionally here, and so that's why we're grabbing that and going into this section, as we can get 2 really nice damage abilities. These are really going to increase your DPS significantly right away. After Frostblade, we're immediately going to go down and grab Endless Cold. Endless Cold got significantly buffed recently with the CN client that happened on September 28th, where now we're actually experiencing this nice buff here. It does a significant amount of damage and can stack after using 20 Frost Crystals. So every time you do 20 Frost Crystals, you can then cast Meteor Storm endlessly. You should prioritize this as soon as you have it up. It won't come up if you have Permafrost on, but once Permafrost does end, you'll be able to pop into Endless Cold. Try to get as much as you can. You'll see in the bottom right your buff for that, letting you know how many you have. It's in blue here, so you'll see it count up. 15, 16, 17, and then once you get to 20, that's when you can go ahead and cast Meteor Storm. So kind of try to prep around that point. You'll see some other abilities will tie into this, but once we have Endless Cold, we're going to do a significant amount of damage. It's going to be a lot more than Frost Lance. You'll even see we can rack up to 17, 20,000, maybe even higher crit damage depending on your build. So we can do a ton of damage with this that'll even out damage or outpace your Frost Lance. After that point, we can come back and grab some additional damage. So we're going to go down to the left side of the tree, grab Shattering Strike. And then after Shattering Strike, we're going to come down into Luck Damage, and then we're going to go into Glazed Vastness. Glazed Vastness actually will outperform Frost Domain, although if you only have 2 points here, here's where you would want to eventually come down into Frost Domain. If you had to make that tough decision there, you only had 2 skill points, you're better off, instead of grabbing these 2 nodes, you're better off going into Frost Domain. However, if you have the 4 skill points, which you more than likely should for that day, you should grab the Luck Damage and the Glazed Vastness, as you will actually outperform that side of the tree for right now. However, again, you're more than likely going to have the skill points, so we're going to jump down into Frost Domain. After that point, we do want to grab some additional damage here, so we're going to go to the right side finally and grab Snow Shadow. And then we're going to come down into Quick Frozen Blast, which will then let us grab the Frost Lance, which is additional damage after 35%. We get a nice 20% damage uplift there. Now, if you only have 2 skill points left, I would go ahead and go into Continuous Storm. That's going to give us some nice damage boost increase, but here's where we're going to try to skip everything else, because eventually we actually do need 50 points in order to get into this stuff here, so you will need to round that just to make sure, but we do have that at this point, so we can skip down and we can go into Frozen Stars, and then we can head down even further into Frost Comet. And yes, we are going even further, again, skipping all of these nodes here, and we're going to jump down into this section and go to our left, which will then get us into Frostlance Barrage. This is going to absolutely double your DPS, double your damage. You'll see even here, I have a comparison. Literally the only skill point that I removed from this tree was this one, was Frostlance Barrage. And you'll see I actually do double the damage in the trial here, or double the time. It took me about 32 seconds without it, and about 14 seconds with it. Of course, there's some variability depending on your luck stuff there, but the fact that it was that much quicker on a 21 trial there just showcases how much more damage this Frostlands Barrage will take. So you do want to skip those for right now, or everything up here you can skip for right now, trying to get down into that skill point. Your next step here can take Meteor Storm Expansion, as we really only have one skill point to work with, or it should after this point, where we then can take Icicle Volley, which every 10 cast of Frostlands does a piercing Ice Spear. That one is fairly decent, so since we only have the 1 point, we're going to go ahead and slot it into there, and this should make out your skill tree. This is going to absolutely significantly improve your damage. Trust me, just skip the rest for right now. Now you might be wondering, we do get some more skill points here. I believe we get 2 or 3 more skill points in the next 24 hours-ish. So you're probably going to be like, where do those go? Can you keep this updated? Well, more than likely we're probably going to go either into Frost Shock, or even this one I would say would be prioritized, which is Frost Crystal Empowerment. So if we get 2 more, we'll go into Frost Crystal Empowerment, and then we'll try to work our way into Freezing Meteor Storm, and as well into Frost Shock. So for right now though, this is what you should be taking. Again, I will keep this build guide up to date. Once we hit 70 skill points is where we're going to do some reworks into Blizzard, but we'll get into that part eventually. For right now though, you should really try to prioritize and get down to Frostlands Barrage as quickly as you can, as that's going to basically increase your DPS by 2 times, maybe even 3 times for some of you. You'll notice quite the damage increase just by this one talent, as it does fire 2 consecutive shots, meaning you are doubling your Frostlands damage during permafrost. And realistically, if you can, if we do actually get 3 skill points, you should actually focus on Freezing Meteor Storm. The reason being is this will actually extend your permafrost even more, so that's going to tie directly into the Frostlands Barrage. Just a quick note there, if we get 2 tomorrow, I do believe we're only getting 2, I would go into Frost Crystal Empowerment for right now, which will help you with your Frost Crystals. If we get 3 tomorrow, then I would go into Freezing Meteor Storm. So just depending on what you want to prioritize there. Of course, if we get an additional one, you can just reset those nodes and then come down into Freezing Meteor Storm. You should try to get your permafrost up as high as you can. That way you can tie into the Frostlands Barrage. Now that you have your talent tree all set up, we got to focus on what our skills or what skills we're taking. Of course, we have the first 3 here. We have our regular auto attack, then our Frostlands, and our ultimate, which is Glacial Heim or Glacial Hymn, and then we're going to come down into our expertise. Meteor Storm is an obvious one. We want to take this one very, very good. Then we take Crystal Veil, and then Maelstrom, and then Permafrost for R5. We're skipping Blizzard for right now, as that's going to kind of tie in later once we can swap with their skill points. So do try to save some skill books there. What I would recommend, so onto the skill book section here, I would recommend doing Frostlands and Meteor Storm first. Those are the 2 you should prioritize. If you can only prioritize one, you should really focus on Frostlands. You'll notice here something significant you might not have been able to tell, or maybe no one's told you. You can see here, when we jump just 1 tier, it's only a 6% uplift right here. And even when we jump from 3 to 4, again, a 6% uplift and a 6% uplift. Well, there actually is a difference here. What we can see is from tier 2 to tier 3 is actually an 18% bump. So you really want to try to get all your abilities to tier 3, and then eventually, of course, into tier 6 when we can in 5 days here. Try to get those prepped and ready to go. You do get 25 at the end of the week, so just make sure you have enough to at least get your main stat ability to a tier 6. But what I would really focus on is getting all of your abilities to tier 3, except Maelstrom and maybe your auto attack. Your auto attack you can. I haven't really noticed a ton here. We can even look. It's not an insane increase here, 2%. On some of these, 3% overall. Haven't done a ton of testing here, but you could try to get this to tier 3. Haven't really focused on it. I would get everything else tier 3 first, though. Then you could go into Rain Call if you need, because you are autoing a little bit, but the farther you get into your skill tree, not really. Once you do get everything T3, like Frostlands, Meteor Storm, Glacial, Crystal Veil, and Permafrost, now we could focus on getting things to tier 5 and getting ready for next week. So again, what I would do is, of course, focus on Frostlands first to get to T5, then get your Meteor Storm to T5, then Permafrost to T5, then your ult to T5, and then we'll come back and we'll maybe do Rain Call or even save it for Blizzard, which we are going to be swapping into eventually. Now, next up here is our gear. We do have certain stat prioritizations that we have to focus on for each and every piece. I did go over this in my last video, but I'm going to go through them very quickly in this one so that you can get the gist. Which quickly here, I forgot even in my last video, you should be prioritizing for your gems. You should be prioritizing the crit gems, which in this case right now the best we can get is Ruby Abyss. Once you're able to unlock the higher ones like the purple tiers, then you could go for that one. But right now we have Ruby Abyss, and so you kind of want to focus on gem crafting if you can, or you can buy them on the auction house. We currently cannot get the higher tier ones, but you do want to get this blue one right now, which is a fancy cut. You'll see for right now this actually doesn't unlock until the server's open for 26 days. So right now we're kind of limited. These are actually pretty high gear boost bump. This is where you can actually increase your gear score if you really needed to, is through these gems. You should be jamming every single piece in the crit gem. So make sure you're doing that. You get a nice little bump here with crit and intellect. Speaking of the gear boost and speaking of trying to get your gear score up, or just in general what you should focus on, you'll see right here my weapon actually does give me M attack, so you really want to be refining your weapon as well as anything that's going to give you M attack, like this one right here. You don't have to worry about these as much. They do get a boost every 5 levels refinement, that you do get a gear boost bump, and this actually does increase quite a lot. You try to focus to get everything up to 5. I probably messed up here getting everything to 6 before I realized too much that I should be really focusing on M attack. As you see, these other pieces give refined armor and endurance. You really do want to get up to like level 7 if you can, as you'll get a nice refinement boost there. We want that M attack damage. Next up, and pretty much last up here, is a section of the game that is highly debated. It is the Imagines. And no, I'm not talking about Mount Imagines. Those are different. Those don't matter at all, or well, they can to you, but they don't matter in this case. What actually does matter is your Imagines on your actual gear. And that is summons. They're basically the summons that you have when you're summoning anything. These will actually increase your damage quite significantly. This is a highly debated part of the game because there are a few discrepancies here that I'm going to go over, and we're going to adjust with that, and kind of my reasoning for what I'm taking, but also alternatives if you do want to go the other route. So first off here, first and foremost, I'm going to recommend Goblin Mage and Muku Chief. If you are a high pay-to-winner, and I'm talking about like $1,000 plus into the game, here's where you go into Muku Chief, and then you want to get your Vino to C3 plus at least. At that point, it is going to beat your Goblin Mage or any other substitute here if you can get this one to C3, although I would recommend focusing on Muku Chief to get to a C3 first. But again, if you're a high pay-to-winner here, you would go C3 Muku Chief plus, obviously, and then C3 Vino. If you aren't insanely paid to win right there or want to pay a lot of money for that, then you're going to want to go Goblin Mage. There is a debate here. This is the one debate. I would still recommend always going Goblin Mage. I'll go over some of the stat breakdowns and why I actually choose Goblin Mage over the other one, which is highly debated and highly sought out, is Muku Scout. And the reason being is if we look here in the actual description, it says grants a buff that increases your ATK. We are not ATK. We are always MATK. You can see it on the right here. It does do a damage here for ATK and MATK, basically magic attack damage. We are always MATK, so we don't want to focus on the ATK one. The problem here is the description is wrong. This actually does passively boost your MATK. So some argue this is actually the best purple Imagine in the game right now, pretty much for every single class, even Frost Mage, because it boosts your MATK. The problem is it works really well on Frostbeam. It does not work well on Icicle. You have a much lower uptime, around 60%, and potentially less, around 40%. A lot of the CN testing, I've referred to the CN forums for this because I currently don't have this one. They've showed that Icicle can only get around 40% uptime and 50% uptime. You are actually losing then, therefore, to a Goblin Mage. If you can maintain Muku Scout at an 80% uptime, it's around 4% better. The other risky part of Muku Scout right now is because it says ATK, and no, this is not a translation error. On the CN client, it also says ATK. So it's not just like they accidentally ported it over from the CN client. No, on the CN client, it also doesn't say MATK. So that's a bit of an issue. I would say that's risky. If they ever do fix this Imagine and make it so that it no longer buffs MATK, that's realistic, although not 100% realistic there. More than likely, they'll probably just change the description because everybody has already kind of leaned into this one. Then that is a bit of a risk there that you're kind of flooding all of this and spending on this one for them to just change that Imagine, right? That definitely could happen. Also, the fact that on a lot of the guides, they're not showing the actual stats. They're not showing the actual uptime, etc., unless they're from the CN client, which they do have a lot of the stat-based stuff. And they actually show that the Goblin Mage will beat it if you can only maintain a under 80% uptime on Muku Scout. At that point, Goblin Mage actually does beat a Muku Scout around 8 to 10% more. You are buffing your intellect. Intellect does scale with MATK. It's about 0.6 to 1, so it's a bit of a different scale there. But at a certain point, MATK and the intel buff here that you get passively from this Goblin Mage is a lot better. And that's also, again, the reason why you take Muku Chief. 10% increase to your crit damage is just absolutely insane. If you didn't know, like, a lot of the passive stuff here, this is kind of where a lot of the damage comes from. But also, when you do pop this, you get a 20% crit bonus damage increase, which lasts 20 seconds. And that you actually get 2 charges, so 40 seconds. Basically, every 50 seconds, you have 40 seconds of bonus damage here. That's why Muku Chief is pretty much unbeaten on this class. And then Goblin Mage does do some decent stuff here. With an int bonus of 14%, you get a 20% bonus on here, where Muku Scout then does some buffing here with it, where it can double the passive. So when you're popping this, you're basically doubling the passive. When you only have a C1, though, you're really only getting 6%. You then get a 12% passive increase. So the problem here is a C1 Muku Scout actually does get beat heavily by a C1 Goblin Mage. But the difference there is eventually when this is C5, it could theoretically beat it at an 80% uptime. Again, I would not recommend it in Icicle. Icicle cannot maintain more than an 80% uptime on this passive. In fact, it's more realistic, around a 40 to 50%. A lot of misinformation out there right now, so I just want to clarify that. Just letting you know why it's a bit risky to go into Muku Scout. If you did already, it's perfectly fine. More than likely, they're just going to fix the description. But if you haven't already, I would go into Goblin Mage, as I do think that's going to be the less risky play, and it will eventually beat it depending on the uptime. Last up here, I'm going to go over the rotation. I'm going to do it really, really slow, and then I'm going to try to do it quickly. Again, this one will take some time. In fact, I'm still practicing it overall, and it's actually going to be dependent if you have Frost Domain. So if you don't have Frost Domain, I would actually recommend casting it a little bit after, or at least after your first ability. I always like to start off with a Crystal Veil. That's going to help generate those crystal shards, because I'm pretty fast with it. You see we're at max already, but I usually get one of those out, or at least it'll show one. Then we'll go into our alt, where we're popping that and landing that down. Then I usually go into my Muku Chief, which is going to give me the buff. At this point, we should have max. As you see, I only have 2, but we should eventually have that max point there. Then we're going to go into Permafrost, which is increasing our haste. And now we're going to be going into spamming our 2 abilities here, both Crystal Veil and Meteor Storm, to get the Frostland shards. You see, we're casting those in between there to kind of rack those up during that point. So we're going back and forth on our 2 and 3 key here, and then getting our Frostland shards to cast those Frost Crystals, because we want to eventually proc our EC, or our Endless Cold, which you'll see eventually here. I will get that after some time. Again, eventually when your Permafrost does end, I also like to go into my second Imagine here, which is the Goblin Mage, so I'm going to pop him at that point, and then going to keep spamming back and forth. If our other Muku Chief has ended, you'll see it in the bottom left with our buffs, then we're going to pop it again to rebuff ourselves and get that crit enhance for that 20 seconds there. Make sure you're not hard casting Frostlands as I did there on accident, but then we'll go back into our casting here. We're trying to get Endless Cold, we're trying to proc it, and popping everything we can off cooldown. I'm not going to pop Permafrost again just to showcase. Eventually here you see, now we got Endless Cold. It's going to highlight that 2 key down there. Now we can just spam this thing. Because we've procced it so much, and because of how Endless Cold works, it actually does work, and I'll show here quickly, dependent on how much you have into it or how much you've casted preemptively. So it's proportional, which increases that final damage by over 100% there, which is awesome. It's going to do a ton of damage for you and help out a ton. So you're going to be doing it a lot faster than I did there. It was a little bit slower ramp up, but that's basically what we're doing. We're proccing our EC, and that thing is going to ramp your damage hard. You're going to outpace pretty much everybody in your raids, your dungeons, etc. once you're proccing EC. So again, we'll go through very quickly my little setup and what I like to do. I don't get this 100% accurate every time, and it's going to take practice too, even for myself, so don't worry if you're not getting it down totally. So again, Crystal Veil, then I like to go into my alt, Muku Chief, popping my Meteor Storm, then Permafrost, and now I'm spamming back and forth so I can pop my Ice Shards, getting those in. As you see, as many as we can. Make sure you're not hard casting. We're autoing so that we can also proc. Remember, also, I did forget to add that one. Make sure you're autoing, because your auto ability here, your left click, can actually proc those instant cast Frost Lances. So that's really nice there. And again, once we're after doing all that, after we're proccing back and forth, eventually getting all of our stuff out, all of our cooldowns out there, even our second Muku Chief, popping our Meteor Storm on cooldown, our Meteor Storm on cooldown, Then we're going into our Endless Cold. We're going to skip out on Permafrost right now. We're going to save it until we have a lot of our cooldowns up. You see, we're just spamming that and getting a ton of damage here. So yeah, that's the basic rotation. Hopefully you got that one down. Overall, it should about cover for today's video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and until the next one, deuces.